Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome. I just woke up. My body's kind of sore. I'm tired. But I remembered I gotta record a podcast. Can't let this shit fall to the wayside. This shit's important. Haven't even had my coffee yet. Which maybe that's a good thing, because I drink a lot of coffee. Well, I just kind of made this idea up on the spot. I think about it a lot, actually. I'm hoping I can talk about it for a while. I think I got a good shot. But let's talk about how our society, as it's set up currently, is run by profit. Sounds simple, makes sense when you say it, but let's go into the depths of how it is set up for profit. I'm in my driveway today, so hopefully nobody bothers me while I'm recording this. But yeah, I guess we'll start. Where should we start? We should start where it all starts. All the bills and laws and shit. Come on, let's start with the government. So, a lot of government officials go into that position for the money. That's why we don't get a lot of good politicians. A lot of them are set up to where they're going to make a lot of money, whether it be through donations or after the fact when they get out. They have a lot of opportunities for books to be sold, um, press conferences, interviews. Once you have your name out there, it's pretty easy to get people to want to talk to you and pay you for your time. Like Michelle and Barack Obama have books, and pretty sure they had a podcast or something like that. And they definitely had a movie. I seen it on Netflix. I did not watch it, but I saw it. Michelle Obama made a movie. And yeah. So not only do they have this opportunity to go in there and potentially have a lot of interviews and rallies and stuff, like Trump's name is still popular, for example. They have a lot of opportunities to make money while they're in that position. Presidents and senators and congressmen, all these people are not supposed to be making as much money as they hold in their pockets. And a lot of them do some insider trading, like Nancy Pelosi. She knows what's going to go down, and then she invests in the proper um, companies or stocks or whatever it may be to make sure she profits a lot of money off of it. Maybe not her directly, but her husband does it for sure. And the problem with that is, if you're letting money influence the decisions we make for this country, of course it's not going to be perfect. I mean, nothing's perfect, obviously, but it's not going to be at its greatest that it could be, because people are incentivizing money. They think that they need money. And unfortunately, that's what our society as a whole has come to, just making this paper. That's all it is paper. And we just agree that it's a value. We could, there's a little, so there's such things as sub-countries. There's a sub-country, there's a fly over here again. There's a sub-country that, well, there's many sub-countries, but this one I watched a video about, the dude uses cookie dough as a form of currency. And because everybody agrees that this is a currency in that sub-country, everybody purchases their items, whatever it may be, with cookie dough. And that's the same with the US dollar and any other currency on this planet besides gold. I mean, even gold, we agreed a long time ago that it has value and it's precious and rare, but gold doesn't fluctuate like most currencies do. And that's why in countries like Venezuela, when they printed too much of their currency, yeah, they have stacks of money now, but it becomes useless because that's due to inflation and the collapse of their economy. And I think in the 60s or 70s, we were on a gold standard up until then, since 1776 when our founding fathers founded our country. And we were on a gold standard because our founding fathers knew you can't mess with gold because there's a certain amount of gold in this country and I guess in the world because it is a pretty rare metal and it takes a lot to find it. Like they're tearing up the Amazon for it right now. We mine for it constantly, but we don't find it very often because there's a finite amount of that resource. And this amount of gold equaled this amount of US dollar. The US dollar originally started because it was just an IOU paper basically for gold. These people had gold and they wanted to give some of this gold to another person, but they didn't have the gold on them at the time because carrying gold, I mean, gold's pretty heavy, man, and you can't just carry gold around all the time. You got to keep it somewhere secure, somewhere safe, in a vault, in a bunker, whatever the hell you're going to keep your gold in. And so the US dollar originally started because you'd write, I owe you this amount of gold, and you'd give them the paper, and then maybe they'd go pick it up later, or you'd go and get the gold eventually and give it to them. And that's how the US dollar started, and we were backed by gold currency. Then Nixon had taken us off that gold currency, and now we could fuck with money, fuck with the dollar, print as much as we want, because we didn't have regulations to stop us from doing so. Our founding fathers knew what humans were capable of. They knew that we were problematic. They knew we had problems and instinct and biology that fucked with a lot of shit. And our brains aren't always right. So what they did was they set up this country so that you couldn't fuck with the founding principles of this nation, like the Bill of Rights, like the Constitution, like the Declaration of Independence. So they put all this together, put all these regulations in place so that we could not mess with what this country was supposed to be. Yeah, it took us a long time to get to where we are now. And people are starting to push the lines a little bit, starting to disregard the founding documents of our country. But the fact of the matter is that we still have these documents to keep this country kind of in order to where it used to be. Yeah, humans are going to fuck it up. That's why they set up these documents, because they knew we'd fuck it up. They're like, humans are retarded. And yeah, we can do great things. We can think up great ideas. But when it comes down to living in prosperity, we're not very good at it because we need adversity, we need struggle, we need a lot of things to keep our biology and our bodies content. And so, where was I going with all that? Oh, yeah. Career politician is what the term is called. And basically, a lot of senators and congressmen and women and presidents go in there knowing they're going to make a lot of money. And that's what they incentivize, is making money, whether it be for the country or for themselves, because it's the same thing. They just take money out of the country's pocket, basically. And it innately they take money out of our pockets because our tax dollars pay for most of the things: the military, the roads, the homeless problem. Anytime they're taking money out to use for their nefarious purposes, they are taking money out of our pockets. And so that's how a lot of politicians and a lot of um, what I said before, senators, congressmen, and women, it's how a lot of these people make their money. For example, the homeless problem in LA is what I know about, but there's more. I guarantee it's across the country. The budget for that problem goes up every year, but the homeless problem gets worse every year as well. That is because people are taking the money, giving themselves like $300,000 a year salaries, and they're lining their pockets with this money that should be going towards this problem to fix the problem. But instead, they're not. They are just lining their pockets. And that is with a lot of things in this country. Say the pharmaceutical industry. Um, and the problem, I should go back to politics. So the thing is, it's not necessarily money influencing these decisions, but it's large corporations that are influencing these decisions. They make laws, they make bills, they try to pass a bunch of shit through Congress to help their business. And the problem with this is corporations are not treated as an individual. They're treated as something whole, more than an individual. Well, I might have to take that back. I think they are treated as an individual. And the problem with that is they're not an individual. They're a machine of profit. Say the pharmaceutical industry, the tech industry. What else is there? There's the agricultural industry. These things that we know we need and we go for regularly, they try to profit off as much as possible. And the thing with corporations is they want to increase their budget and increase their revenue every year. They want to be bigger and better. They want to do more. And it's just not sustainable that way because if you're trying to make more, say as a pharmaceutical company, that means you have to sell more drugs, get more people into the hospitals and treated by doctors and such. And to do that, you have to make people sick. You have to incentivize giving them things that they do not necessarily need. And so, say the pharmaceutical industry, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, all these companies have a history of unsafe practices and pharmaceutical drugs that they pass through, and they get approved because what happens is, so they pharmaceutical companies make these drugs, they do studies on them within the company. Say 100 people die out of 1,000. Well, they can turn it to 1 in 10 because that's basically the same thing. And then they drop these studies down to get peer reviewed. And I'm not sure if they do that within their own company, but these peer reviewed studies are what drop down to the doctors. And the doctors read these peer reviewed studies and they, oh, this drug is good for this drug is good for this. And that's how they get prescribed. And the problem with that is 1 in 10 doesn't sound like a lot, but you give it to, say, 1,000,000 people, that's at least 100,000 people dying. That's a lot of people. And that's happened with a drug called Vioxx. It's happened with the Oxycontin problem we have now. Opioid addiction is rampant. Fentanyl. A lot of substances that we consider harmful today started in the pharmaceutical companies. LSD started there. They were being studied in the 50s and the 60s before they were made illegal. And what else do I want to talk about here? So by incentivizing that these things happen like this, they're raking in endless amounts of money, whether it be by making people sick. Not maybe, okay, so there's people in there. Obviously, it's like in any job. There's good people there and there's bad people there. Unfortunately, the machine is designed for money. And so it gravitates towards making money. And then it incentivizes these good people who are there to be corrupted and to make them more money. Like, doctors don't get paid unless they complete their initial, um, what's it called? Appointment with anybody. They have to diagnose you and they have to fix the problem. That's the doctor's job. And so they have to give out pills or do something that will help the problem. And if it's not helping the problem, they don't really care. I'm sure some do, and a lot do, I should say. The majority should care, because that's why they get into that field, is to help people. But there's a small portion who just want that money, and so they just prescribe these medications or tell these people to do these certain things. But the thing is, a lot of the problems we have as a society, heart disease, obesity, this is what I talked about in the previous podcast, can be solved by three simple things. I mean, they're simple in speaking of them, but they're not simple to execute because it's hard in this society. Sleep, eating well, and exercise. Those three things can prevent a lot of problems. Exercise has been known to be 10 times stronger than any antidepressant or any anti-anxiety medication. And knowing that should be enough to go and exercise, but we don't because it requires effort. Joe Rogan says this all the time, if there was a pill that you could take to feel the effects of exercise without doing the effort, everybody would be addicted to that drug. And I believe that wholeheartedly because the endorphins and the feelings you get after you exercise are amazing. You feel so good. You feel so good about yourself. You feel so happy and about the world. You know, like all the sun shining. Everything feels amazing. It's just so good. And that goes back to the vitamin discussion I talked about too. If people were told by their doctors, the thing is, doctors go to med school, but, well, I got two things to say about that. So this Andrew Huberman is a ophthalmologist and neuroscientist at Stanford, and he said, these are his words, not mine, that as soon as you get out of med school, everything you have learned is already old. And that is the problem with most people. They don't continue to learn. It's the same with high school. People go to high school, they assume they've got an education, but they don't realize that they need to learn a lot more if they want to make it through life successfully, instead of just putting your head down and conforming to the societal norms, going to work every day, following all the rules that they give you. And I'm not saying to burn it all down to the ground or to stop following rules, but you need to question. You need to question. And questions are autonomous. Jesus Christ, I can't talk. Questions autonomously produce answers. Maybe not necessarily answers, but it produces knowledge to make speculative decisions on what you're going to do. And not a lot of people ask questions anymore. And that's a fault of our school system and our working system. People just assume I have to do this or I will either fail school or get fired or some negative result will come from not doing what they're told and what they're supposed to follow. And that brings me to our next discussion, the school system. The school system was originally set up, I'm pretty sure by the Romans, to make a good soldier, make an obedient soldier. It made it so people were educated into wanting to go to war and wanting to fight and wanting to follow orders. And then when America had gone into their industrial age, it was taken and reformed into making obedient factory workers. What I've learned from working in a factory, and now I'm in another one, but it's the same. It was my first day yesterday, but I've learned already that most factories are set up almost identically to school. Yeah, you're doing other work. You're not doing tests. I mean, you're doing tests sometimes, actually, but you're not doing the curriculum of the school system. You're doing that factory's work, obviously. And a lot of it is set up exactly like school. You got bells, you've got specific times you can go to break and lunch. I mean, it's pretty wild. If you sit there and look at it as like another school, you are learning, yes, but you are also just doing the same thing as you were doing those 12 years you were in high school and middle school and elementary school. And the problem with that is the school system doesn't teach you how to think. It doesn't teach you how to use your brain, how to think critically. I mean, yes, like I've said before, there are good people in that profession and there are bad people in that profession. And the good people you remember, like I remember a lot of teachers that I had that helped me, taught me, and gave me good life advice and good knowledge that I could use to this day. And I respect and admire and love those people for giving me this information. But then there's those people who don't really want to be there. It's like any profession. You have to be passionate about what you're doing. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, you're just there for the paycheck. Or you're just there for whatever it is. You got to take care of your family. You got to take care of your parents, whatever it may be. But you're not passionate about it. So you silently and subconsciously resent what you were doing. And that's how some teachers get, which I don't blame them because they have the most important job. Okay, they have the second most important job on the planet. Most important job on the planet is being a parent. You are raising a little human being to function in society later down the road. And that is an important job. And you have to do the best possible job. Give the child the best possible chance she has to succeed in making it in this society and culture. And then the second most important job is teaching. Because if you don't have a teacher to teach that future generation, then they're just going all willy-nilly. And they don't know what the fuck to do. They're just hoping they make it through life, basically. And these teachers don't get paid enough. They get a low salary. I mean, I'm sure I'd make more than them, actually, in a factory. And that's not to say it to brag or to act like I'm better than them. It's to say it because it's a fact. Teachers make less than factory workers. And they have one of the most important jobs on this planet. And that's why some get resentful and start to hate their jobs. And why they don't do as good as the other teachers who are passionate about what they're teaching and what they're doing it for. And so, like I was saying, they don't teach us how to think. They give us information and teach us what to think. You need to think this about this. You need to think this about that. Rather than teaching us how to use our own critical thinking and problem solving skills to solve problems and figure a way out. We need to, I think the best possible thing is, if you like working at McDonald's, go work at McDonald's. If you like working on a racetrack, go work on a racetrack. If you like working in a factory, go work in a factory. It's not about everybody being entrepreneurs and starting their own businesses and doing the stock trading so that they make a lot of money and don't have to work anymore. That's not what it's about. It's about doing what you are passionate about. If you are passionate about working at McDonald's and making burgers because you're feeding people and you found purpose in what you were doing there, then go for it. The problem is, most people don't have that. Most people don't do what they love. They don't do what they enjoy. They go to work for a paycheck. They don't find what they're passionate about. They don't find what they want to do with their lives. And then they wake up one day and they're 70 years old and they're like, oh man, I wasted my life. And that's why a lot of old people, I believe, are bitter and resent they resent younger people. Because I've listened to a lot of millionaires and billionaires and people talking about money, and the number one thing I hear is that all these old rich millionaires and billionaires and stuff would trade all that money in an instant for youth, because the journey that you go on to get to that is the what's worthwhile. All the effort you put in, all the hours you didn't sleep, all the time you had to put in to make this dream come true, that was the purpose. And once they get it, they stop. They stop trying. They stop trying for their next purpose. They don't have a new purpose anymore. They've got everything they thought they wanted. And I think that's a problem, because if everybody's just shooting for money, you're not going to be happy. That money can facilitate happiness, but it can't give you happiness. You have to reach into your own mind, soul, body, and you have to find that happiness for yourself. And if you're not actively trying to be happy, you're not going to be, because it requires effort. Like I've talked about before, effort equals happiness. You have to do hard things to be happy. I guess with that being said, since I talked about how the school system was originally made to make obedient soldiers, let's talk about the military industrial complex. And then I will talk about the agricultural system that we have set up in this country. Well, I think it's set up in the world as a whole. I guess I should start with saying, when Eisenhower was leaving office, and this man was a general that became president, he had the opportunity to talk about anything he wanted to talk about. And he decided to talk about how the military industrial complex was a complex setup that people wanted to go to war for money. Whether that be sending a bunch of shit over there or spending a bunch of money so that people can line their pockets, People do it on purpose. That's why we're in the war with Ukraine and Russia right now. The U.S. didn't have to get involved with that shit. The U.S. didn't have to get involved with Vietnam. The U.S. didn't have to get involved with Iraq, Saudi Arabia. All these wars that we went in, Afghanistan, and we lost. We didn't win. Nobody won. We just spent a bunch of money and then got out. And it was 20 years in Afghanistan that we wasted for absolutely no reason. And that is exactly what Eisenhower was warning us about. There is the system set up to make money off war. And if we're such an advanced culture, like we say we are, we should be at a point in our existence where we don't have to go to war. Yeah, we're going to have conflicts with other nations, other people in our own nation, other people in our family, other people in our friendships. We're going to have conflict. Because conflict is essential for growth. If you're not combating and debating ideas, it's not arguing. If you're arguing, yelling at each other, throwing things, fighting, that's not what conflict is supposed to be. Conflict is supposed to be rational and loving debate about ideas and figure out whose idea works the best. And that's why I like doing these podcasts and like listening to podcasts, because it's not supposed to be in these little 5-minute segments that like the news does. It's supposed to be in a long form discussion. If you got to talk about these ideas for 5 hours, do it. Yeah, we don't have 5 hours much anymore. Talk to these people for as long as you can. Write down where you left off and what kind of ideas. Take notes. Just basically take notes about the points you wanted to talk about, or the points you liked or disliked about what they had said. And then come back to the discussion later. It doesn't have to be these 5-minute segments where this person gets to talk for 30 seconds and then this other person gets to talk for 30 seconds. That's not how we get these ideas out and get them to a rational and influential standpoint. You have to sit there and talk about them for a long period of time. And that's why this censorship problem and being canceled is such a problem. Because the only way to beat bad ideas is with good ideas. If you're censoring these bad ideas, people aren't seeing them and aren't debating them and can't make their own rational and ethical decision about what they want to believe in. And if you're not doing that, how the hell are we going to advance as a culture? That's why I was saying conflict is important. You need conflict for growth. But if you sit there, say, not Joe Biden, because everybody knows he's brain dead, but let's say you take JFK, if he was still president, and you take whatever leader, I don't know who was the leader, Castro or, that was Cuba, what the fuck? I guess we can go to Cuba. If you took Castro and JFK, sat them down in a room, no weapons, no physical violence, no verbal violence, no mental abuse, and you had a translator if they needed so, and you sat both these people down and allowed them to have a debate about whose ideas were better, and they wanted to do it willingly. They decided to do this, not that they were forced into it. But you have these two people debating their ideas. They're going to come out of that after set amount of hours, and they're going to hopefully have, if they let their egos down, they let their guard down, and actually engage in coming to an agreement, they will come out with an agreement that benefits both of them and their people. And then they can help each other. And that's how culture is supposed to be. We still look at ourselves as these separate nations. We're not these separate nations. And that's what fuels the military-industrial complex. Is fear and warmongering and propaganda. They say this shit Oh, just like 9/11. Oh, these people bombed our country. We got to go and get them. And that's what led us into that 20-year war in Afghanistan. But what they didn't tell us is we were already fucking around in those countries, killing people, doing stupid shit for oil and whatever other resources we wanted to take. And that's why they came and took action on the U.S. If we could all come to an agreement, we wouldn't need war anymore. War doesn't solve anything. That's why they all end. They all end with people being dead. That's the bottom line. People are dying. And you're letting, not you specifically, but we're, as a country, letting people die trying to win. We treat it like a football game. Oh, I picked this team, and my team's going to win. But there's no winning because your teammates are still getting fucking decimated in that other country. Not only that, we're decimating other peoples. That's like if China or Russia or whatever it may be came here and started a war on U.S. soil. People are dying, and it's not a win or lose situation. It's the fact that people are dying, and we can't have people dying. There's no point for war, but the reason that we go into all these petty, meaningless wars is because of this military-industrial complex that wants to make war for money. And that'll bring me, I guess, into the agricultural. I guess we'll talk about technology first. The tech companies are the same way. If you watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix, I watched it again the other day, and it really opens your mind to what's going on. All these social media apps are set up to persuade us into certain things. Using their app more, buying more of whoever product they are sponsored by. The way that The Social Dilemma put it was, if there is not a product being sold, our attention is the product. You don't have to pay to use Snapchat or Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp or any of these social media platforms. But what you do have to do is pay with your attention. They get paid by advertisers, and these advertisers put their ads on the apps, and they want you to see them. They're selling, what was the word they used? They're selling assurance, basically, that you were going to see this ad, and it's going to get more sold than it would have if you didn't put it on this app. And they go down to the point where they can see exactly what we're looking at, for how long we're looking at it, where our eyes are on the screen. They can see all of this. And they're basically building a model, an AI model of us, to figure out what we like and dislike to sell more of whatever they're trying to sell. And now that's why we're so divided now, is because they figured out a short while ago that fear and hate sells. Negativity is more, it gets our attention more than positivity and inspiration. And that's why we see the things that we don't want to see. Ooh, man, I'm sore and tired. But, so, that's why we're so divided, is because they use our own brains basically against us. The way The Social Dilemma put it, and this is obviously for profit. That's the point of this episode. Is all this shit is set up for profit. What was I just going to talk about? Oh yeah. The way that The Social Dilemma put it was, you're taking these supercomputers with advanced intelligence, artificial intelligence, way smarter than we could ever be. And then you're pinning it against this machine that is millions of years old and hasn't changed biologically, who's going to win? It's going to be the technology, obviously, because we cannot. It just hijacks our systems, our dopamine system. That's why everybody's addicted to their phone. That's not an accident. They did it on purpose. It's said in that Social Dilemma documentary. The people who made the companies don't let their kids on, or made the algorithms and stuff, won't let their kids onto these technologies. They actively keep their kids away from it, and had to go so far as to writing algorithms themselves to get themselves out of the algorithms, because they themselves became addicted to it, even knowing what it was being set up for. We gotta fucking figure out how to change this shit, because if everything's set up for profit, it's not gonna be good for the little people like us. The consumer has the power. We decide what we want to buy and what we don't want to buy. But if they're hijacking our brains to persuade us subconsciously into what we want to buy, then we don't have power anymore. We got to take our power back. And that brings me to the final thing I want to discuss, is the way our agricultural system is set up. Farming used to be where farmers would take these plants, they would pick the strongest strains they had that year, and they would put these two seeds together, and they would grow an even stronger plant, and then they would have a yield for next year. But then I read a book called Seed Money. It's about Monsanto and how they had a chemical product, or they had excess oil from the war, and they turned that oil into a petrochemical product called Roundup. And this Roundup killed weeds and made plants greener. But in doing so, it made the plants weaker, because it took away their resistance to pests and natural weeds and stuff. And so they made plant food to strengthen the plants. And doing this cycle, we've used an excess amount of chemical product to grow our food. Not only that, they made a seed that is resistant to these chemicals and incentivize people to buy them. And because these seeds are technically their product, they had made it so you can't replant seeds. So these farmers have to buy seeds every year rather than replanting what they had from the previous year. I lost my train of thought. So in doing all of this, we are now eating an excess amount of chemical while we're eating our food. It is not healthy. It is destroying our human body. And from what I understand from a video I watched, it's separating our cells. And that's why we get so sick. Our immune systems are not as strong as they need to be to keep sickness away. That's why people get sick all the time. And that fuels the cycle. We eat this food, we get sick, we go into the pharmaceutical companies, we take their prescribed medicines and get better, get side effects from this prescribed medicine, and then we take medicine for these side effects, and so on and so forth. All these companies tie into one another so that they help each other make money off of our own behalf. I guess the point of this episode is just to say, figure out, it's not to diminish any of these companies. We need the agricultural industry. We need the pharmaceutical industry. We need the tech industry. We need the military industry. And we need the political industry. But we need to take the money out of it. We need to figure out a way that they're not profiting off of our own behalf. I think a start would be to take money out of politics, because they influence a lot of laws that get passed, and a lot of bills, and so on. I guess that's all I got to talk about. I'm pretty tired. I'll probably go drink my coffee. I just need to get a pot out, talk about some nonsense with whoever may be listening. You're beautiful. I love you. And I hope you have a great day, week, month, year, life. And that's it. Have a great time, my friends.